It's Gene from Mavstar Observatory. Good afternoon. I've got a guest with us today, aka Stormcarol, and the reason why I've invited her over today to the observatory is because I know a lot of you guys out there are, not experts in the field of the topic of pole reversal, and you have a lot of innocent thoughts, just like Stormcarol does. She comes from a very professional background. I believe she's got a couple of degrees. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. But the reason why we brought Stormcarol on is to just ask a few questions and test her knowledge on the subject of pole reversal and climate change, because I think it's important to get an idea just how the general public, and it doesn't have to be just educated people, it could be just the opinion of ordinary people, but more importantly is to get an idea of the mindset of whether they are fully aware of some of the subjects that we discuss on this channel and their implications. So we was talking just before we started to do this video, weren't we, Carol, about sustainability with appliances, and maybe you'd like to kick off with your opinions on that and how things need to change, perhaps.
Yeah, I was just saying that even today, I heard on the news that manufacturers were being told that they have to make appliances last longer now because of the effect it has on
the environment. Yeah, some of the components that they use are cheap, like the quality of steel that they use in the bearings perhaps isn't the highest. And that could be for a few reasons, I suppose. It could be, on the manufacturer's side, a good thing, because it means they sell more washing machines or dishwashers or fridge freezers, because these are the things that mainly are building up on our waste tips. And, you go to the recycling centre and you see these things in large amounts. And really, most people in a lot of the circumstances have probably gotten rid of these pieces or utensils or utilities out of their house just because one component failed on them. Now, I believe the government are trying to drive a programme to the manufacturers to suggest that they use better components in order for a more sustainable product that lasts a lot longer. And this is something that we was doing already probably 40 years ago, wasn't it?
when I can remember my mum had her first twin tub, and that thing was so basic, even as the first sort of washing machine that came out. It was hard work, but it lasted forever. It just went on and on and on. And you think about, well, why can't they make things like, they can make these things last. They choose not to because it means more money in their pockets, doesn't it?
Yeah. Excuse me. I think a good example of this is the way we are now going forward with electric vehicles, and they are expecting to do away with all the combustion vehicles off the road. Why can't we fit motors and batteries to the cars that we have now? Surely that would be more sustainable than replacing the whole car. I mean, a lot of energy goes into building even combustion cars. A lot more energy probably go into building electric cars. I think it would be more sustainable if the government was to, ask car manufacturers that manufacture combustion engine cars to perhaps come up with a way of when this needs to be done, perhaps a unit that can replace the engine, like a motor, and be fitted to the gearbox, with some modified housing so it fits most vehicles. And
do you know what? Don't get me started on electric cars. I mean, they're made out to be the most brilliant thing that we're all heading towards. But has anyone thought about the impact on the environment? That when an electric car is scrapped, where's that going to go?
Yeah. I mean, in some of the circumstances, there's a lot of toxic metals that are involved in building the battery technology.
Have you ever seen one of those batteries blow? I mean, if one of those batteries go, and there's just no chance of getting out of that car. Have you ever seen on YouTube electric cigarette lighters? sort of explode. And isn't that similar to a car battery? I mean, I might be a real novice on this, but I just don't think people have thought about. We're all supposed to be saying, yeah, let's go and get electric cars because normal cars that take fuel is no good for the environment anymore. But what about the scrappage on electric cars in the future? Nobody's ever investigated how that's going to sort of impact on everything. I mean, let alone putting infrastructure in for electric cars. In my book, it's just not going to happen, I feel. It's too expensive, the cars are too expensive, the infrastructure is going to be expensive. People are going to realise that actually to charge a car up is going to be more expensive than actually putting petrol or diesel in your car. And that has an ultimate impact on on getting electric supplies, producing more electric.
I think you've raised two very important points there.
Yeah, exactly, which we need to come back to. But let's get back to the washing machines and domestic appliances.
Okay,
we just shot off on you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Thank God somebody said already, let's make domestic appliances last longer. Because not only for the environment, I mean, let's think about people in general who can't afford to keep replacing appliances. It's getting ridiculous. But we could go off on a real tangent here on loads and loads of things about people of today experiencing more poverty than ever before in all areas. So what do you want to say about the last thing about domestic appliances before
Well, I just want to finish off on the two very important points that you raised with electric cars. One is they're very expensive to start with. Two, not very many people are aware that when they plug their electric car into the mains that there are still coal power plants producing one of the things that they're trying to get rid of, which is CO2. And, the energy conversion, from coal to electricity is not very economic. So, when you really find out how much your car has cost in environmental terms to charge up, it really isn't, as they are saying, sustainable.
Trying to sell to us. Exactly.
The other thing is that, batteries, as we know, have got a life expectancy. And I think with cars, it's going to be around about 6 to 7 years.
Really? So, in electric cars?
Yeah. So if you purchase a car, I'm going to mention one of them, which usually comes in at a cost of over £100,000. That's a Tesla. So if you've got to replace that battery in that car, I'm just wondering how much that's going to be. How much of the cost of the Tesla is in actually the battery? It could be in the tens of thousands. So I'm just wondering, down the road, how is this going to serve the person better than what we already have, which is a combustion engine? And the other thing is that what we're talking about here, and the whole reason why the governments around the world want to convert from combustion engines to electricity is because they want to reduce CO2. And we already know that there's no need to reduce CO2 because CO2 is not at an increased alarming rate. And we know that if we go back thousands of years, throughout the glacial and interglacial records, when the Earth has got hotter and colder, that CO2 has risen even more than what it is now and declined as temperatures have driven CO2. Because what the governments are trying to say is that CO2 is the horse and temperature is the cart, but it's actually the other way around. Global temperatures drive CO2 levels. When we have an increase in temperature, there's more release of CO2 out the oceans, and when you really look at the amounts of carbon emissions that humans put out, it could be something like, just for an analogy, probably 20 gigatons compared to the oceans, which put out nearly 8,000 or 80,000 gigatons. So our footprint really is very small to start with. So getting back to the appliances, it's great, but
great news, yeah, ka-ching, ka-ching for all us domesticated, I won't say women, we've got to include men here now because men are becoming modern world for men as well. Yeah, men. I know loads of men that like to look after their home and do the washing. My partner the other day was saying, "Let me do the washing. Just let me do it for a change. I like to do it." I was going, "Yeah, okay, feel free." But anyway.
Yeah, and this is the same old thing, isn't it? At the beginning, we seem to start off on the right foot. Then you get these managers in that say we need to take this route because it's more economic, and it makes us more competitive, and we'll sell more appliances. But it's not really serving the person that you really should be thinking about, and that's the consumer. You should be building a product that is meant to last a lifetime, and we don't hear that anymore. A lot of manufacturers would boast that this will last a lifetime.
Do you know what? It makes me think, there's also something I heard on the news today about the UK keeping its steel industry going, and whether, this guy was saying, would be crippled if a company hasn't got its own steel industry going, how dependent would you be on other countries? And we was like one of the most important countries to get all that going with Iron Age, weren't we?
Yeah, like we started the Industrial Revolution.
Exactly. It all sort of came from here, as far as my limited knowledge goes. But it's just are they really trying to sort of claw back some of that power they've given to other countries with the steel manufacturing, bring it back to the UK so we become self-sufficient again in a lot of sort of areas?
Yeah. It's a really difficult one to gauge what's going on, and it becomes more harder to understand what's going on with the processes now, because these companies have become so big, and we know that if you look at the major players of global manufacturing across all ranges, food, appliances, vehicles, they almost seem to work hand with each other, and they can set an agenda. I think this is one of the reasons why now it's becoming more frequently understood that corporations have more power than governments, and it seems to be the governments now that are doing what the corporations want them to do, as opposed to the governments asking the corporations to do what they want them to do.
Yeah, I think I agree there.
But the words that they use is sustainability, and when you really look into what they're proposing, there is no sustainability with it. I mean, if we just look at the way we produce energy now and how it failed in Texas a few weeks ago with that snowstorm, some people say it's once in a 30-year record broken or once in a 100-year record broken. It doesn't really matter what was broken. What matters is the effects of that snowstorm. Took out the grid of the city, and as a result put 100 million people in a very difficult situation. And we are living in a modern world where you would think that such a thing could never happen, and almost plunges back into the dark ages. A lot of people never had running water, for instance, never had electricity, so some of them that had a reliability to cook the food on electric ovens, lost that ability. And the government wasn't there to rush in and help them like a lot of people thought. It seems to be, the general attitude that a lot of people have is that we pay taxes, and therefore the government will come to our aid when we need them. And if you look at a lot of the catastrophes around the world when they take place, the government really are the last ones on the ground. And there are some good examples of this. If you look at in America again, Katrina, where all the floods happened. People were waiting for many, many months before there was any assistance or organisation set up to actually get there on the ground and help people. So there is what they say and there is what they do, and they're usually two very different things. But apart from appliances,
coming back to the electric car, it's my belief that we might have electric cars actually because they're too expensive. What will happen or may happen? Personally, I don't believe anything will happen with electric cars. Personally, I think we'll just carry on using what we've got now because we've got dual electric cars where they use half petrol, half battery. What's the point in that?
Well, because you're still using a combustion engine when the batteries go flat to recharge.
Exactly.
Or,
you might as well just kept it petrol.
Yeah.
It would have been cheaper to have bought up the
I suppose it's a fail-safe. If the battery goes flat, you don't just get stuck on the side of the road. You can always back.
No, is it like putting your toe in the water just to try it and then go, oh, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But
do you think you would have an electric car?
No, I don't want an electric car because, like I said, I think we're being the big cover-up on actually how much it's going to cost us individually to charge up that car. I think if you use an electric, then you've got to get the electric anyway. So how's that going to be mass-produced, or the production of electricity pumped up so that it meets the demand of electric cars?
I heard in America that there was being charged $900 to charge up one Tesla.
Well, exactly. Just that on its own, it's not feasible.
And I think that the grid is inferior in most parts of the world because when the grid went down in Texas, how would you have charged your electric car?
What would you have done? Gone to the stables and got your horse out?
Well,
that's where we should be going. Back to horses. Back to horse and cart.
But this is where they want to drive us away because horses produce methane just like cows, and they're trying to do away
with it. It's good for the land.
Well, yeah.
No.
It's cleaner than
go behind them.
Charging battery cars up.
Yeah, go behind them, collecting all the manure. You can sell it off. It's another resource.
Yeah, I suppose when the horse is coming to its last stage, you can always eat it as well.
No. We're supposed to be reducing the amount of meat we eat. No, not meat. The meat we eat, and I was saying to my other half, we should have at least a few more vegetarian days. Is it pescatarians or something like that? Not vegetarians. I definitely wouldn't become vegan, although that might not suit most people, me saying that, because I believe that we need to have a certain amount of meat in our diet.
Well, my view on this is that we've been eating meat for 42,000 years. There was probably a time in the hunter-gatherer days where we ate nothing but meat. So, it's pretty natural for us to eat meat, and at the end of the day, we do have eyes in the front of our head, and we are considered predators, just like tigers and all the other animals that have their eyes in their head. So, we are natural meat eaters.
Yeah.
And, there are other sources of protein, but that is where we've got our protein for the last 42,000 years.
Yeah. But coming back to, let's just say, it's great on the electric appliances, but actually the government's now saying, sort of like pushing the fact that manufacturers should do domestic appliances that last great for a number of reasons. So that's great. And as for electric cars, you asked me if I'd ever have one. No, I don't want an electric car. Another reason that I don't want an electric car, apart from the infrastructure and the cost, is the fact that if that car is going to explode, there's no way you're getting out of it. You're going to be dead.
I remember when there was a problem with a certain mobile phone manufacturer. I do know the name of it, but I'm not going to mention it. But they had a lot of problems with their batteries exploding in the phones. And that wasn't too long ago.
Can I just stop you there and say, do you remember the dummy? The adverts with the dummy in the car, and they smash it into a wall and saying, this is what will happen at 40 miles an hour, and this is what will happen at 30 miles. Have they ever shown us any adverts like that with electric cars? Let's see some of those adverts, please, on how safe an electric car is if it smashes into a wall. That's what I say.
I would imagine that these batteries that the cars are using have a lot of cells in them, and in an impact, I bet you they have tested the cars in impacts to see whether these cells do stand a chance of hitting each other or as part of the crush of the accident, and whether they're short. But these batteries are not like ordinary car batteries, where you've probably got 80 amps, I would imagine that they consist of many amps. And, that sudden release of energy.
What will happen? It'll be like a little nuclear explosion going off.
I just dread to think of what it would be like to see one of the car batteries go. But what about if there is ordinary car fire?
Exactly. We've seen nothing on this aspect of electric cars out there. We've been told how wonderful they are and that we all need to convert to electric cars by this year. But where is the stats regarding safety and blah, blah, blah?
I've got a good idea of where you probably get some information on this, how to deal with a crisis involving an accident or a fire with an electric car, and that would probably be the fire department, because I would imagine they have been briefed on how to deal with such issues.
Well, the wooden broom knocking the person in that guy wouldn't work, would it?
Well, there's a lot of things with the way we're going in this world. There's a lot of concerns. I mean, another one is the way we produce our electricity. Now they want to go even further by producing more wind generation and more solar fields. But these are the very things that failed in that snowstorm in Texas because they couldn't operate the
solar panels just get covered.
The photovoltaic cells was covered, so they weren't producing any electricity because obviously no solar radiation was getting to the voltaic cell. And the wind generators, their wings had frozen so that they couldn't turn. I mean, we had a similar situation in Scotland when we had some severe weather, where we have actually got, and I dare say America has got them as well, heated propellers on the wind generators. But they built up ice, they'd switched on the heaters before they had them turning, but decided not to have them turning. So what they was doing was heating up the propellers on these wind turbines, or the wings if you want to call them that, and they weren't producing any electricity. So they was actually consuming electricity by having these things heated up and not being used. I don't think that this is something that we should be reliant on. But I mean, we've covered a couple of things here in this little topic that we've been talking about. We've covered the fact that if you've got an electric car and the grid goes down for a couple of weeks, you're not going to be able to charge your car.
Yeah.
And if the state that you live in or the country that you live in is heavily reliant on wind generation and solar power, then you're not going to be able to charge your car in any case because the grid's these things aren't going to be able to produce the electricity to start with so that you can charge up your vehicle.
Yeah, so I think I've got some really good reasons there why I am not for electric cars.
I do like the idea of the government coming down on these manufacturers now to make their appliances more lasting. I think it's a great idea. And yes, we do see a lot of these things on the waste tip at the recycle centres. Tons of washing machines, dryers that have failed through just, not the design, not the actual computers or the programming, but through the actual materials that was used. And the reason why they was used to start with was to produce a cheaper product. And, it's always the way. We all do it, don't we? Sometimes, we've got a budget of, say we need an appliance, we've sort of like got a budget in that window, and if we see something cheaper, we're encouraged to buy it because, that's all we can afford at the end of the day. So, you in some circumstances, you've got no choice but to have that appliance.
Yeah, I mean, when I go looking for an appliance, I look at the cheapest. I know which makes that are more reliable than others, and then I'll look at the most expensive, which I only dream of having.
Don't we all?
And then I sort of go just a little bit above the lowest, just because I think that's going to probably last me a little bit longer than that cheapest model. So that's how I buy appliances. I wish I could go for the top end because they're given either 10-year guarantee or 25-year guarantee.
I think those can be thrown into question as well these days because
do you think so?
Yeah, sometimes some components aren't covered under the guarantee when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of claiming.
Yeah, but
just
they
like
do
car
just
guarantees.
last. They do last, you know. Before, not so long ago, I had expensive appliances and they did last. And you bought something because, you know, it was a little bit more expensive than you, but you knew it was going to last at least 5 years.
Yeah, there was a very famous person that came out with a statement that if only you paid that little bit extra, you know, later on you wouldn't be so sorry that you got something cheaper that is no longer usable. And what was there is something that was there's like another statement that follows that.
Think on that one, maybe you can fill us in another time. But it's like these electric cars. If we just divert again back to the electric cars, I can't see how it's going to be feasible. What I feel people or those that have the money to set these things in motion is a car that drives itself. And instead of us using public transport...
That technology already exists.
Well, yeah, but I think this is the way things will go rather than us all owning our separate cars, is that a grid will be built where a car pulls up, you get into the car, so you've got your own space, like having your own car, and you'll go wherever it is you need to go.
And pay per mile.
Yeah. I think
I have a feeling that's what's going to happen, because you know it's everything is merging into one thing, and I think all the car manufacturers are going to merge into one manufacturer inevitably in the end. You know, because the competitive market usually encourages people to become that competitive that they push out all the competitors eventually, and they end up monopolising the market. But I just see it the same way as you. If there are going to be electric cars in the future, they're probably going to be self-driven. Tesla's got a perfect working example of this. He's already had it go from one state to the next. But for legal reasons, he's had a driver sit in the car, but he has done it all itself. And he said it's probably not far off being put into application.
Is that the guy that's building the underground tunnels for the cars to drop into this little sort of carriage, and then it drops down underground, and then it goes zooming along at over 100 miles an hour to wherever it's... That's what I'm saying. It's already happening in some sort of small degree. I feel that's like a little bit of a test pilot that's going on.
Well, he's actually building tunnels. He's actually now got the drilling machine. He's building them. So it's going to happen.
So that's where I think this whole thing about electric cars are going.
Yeah, we might not have a choice.
No. But I'm going to hold on to my evil machine that uses diesel at the moment, because I know I can go and get it filled up at any time I wish. I know it's reliable. I know it's not too expensive. You know. Yeah,
we're just not geared up.
An average working person like me, who's on minimum wage, can just go and get my car filled up, and it works. And I'm not dependent on anybody for that car. It's my freedom. It's my independence, and the government or anybody else can't tell me how I use that vehicle.
Yeah, and the other thing is there are a lot more petrol stations or fuel stations than there are charging points for these cars.
Well, don't you think that's what they should be doing then? Convert or putting in more charging points at the petrol stations that already exist? Isn't that a start?
Yeah, I think Shell Oil have already got into this.
Oh.
Yeah, I think these problems are being addressed. But if you own an electric car right now, I bet it can be frustrating sometimes to think that if you go beyond the range of the battery, that you might panic, or you might have to put in your plans and your journey that you're going to have to stop at a location where there is a charging point, which could be inefficiently taking you out your way. You know, so you're using more energy to find these charging stations. They've
got these dual fuels. You've got half battery and half fuel. I mean, what's the point?
Yeah, I think they are a good idea, the hybrids.
You think
you've got
so?
a bit of both worlds, yeah.
That's only half doing the job, though, isn't it? Which I don't agree. You either do it or you don't do it. You don't half do the job.
Oh, I would agree on electric cars if you could just put one small solar panel on your roof of your house and it charged the car up.
How about putting a solar panel on the car?
Or have the roof at one. Yeah, I'm just saying.
Made out of solar panels? The whole car?
Yeah,
made out of solar panels?
Yeah, if the car was that efficient that it would charge itself up off the capacity of the size of the roof with a solar panel in there.
Actually, that solves the problem of having the infrastructure in. If the infrastructure's already on the car, it does it itself.
Yeah, the problem is with that is that, for the roof size of the car, and even if you included the bonnet and the boots or any surface on the car, it still probably wouldn't produce any more than 2 watts.
How do you know? There's people out there who are scientists that probably could work this out and make that feasible. Now, if that was more feasible...
I think the best technology that I've seen, and I've studied a lot of these, I have really gone through tons and tons of 0-point energy this, 0-point energy that, apart from fitting a small nuclear reactor in the car, which you buy once, and it lasts the lifetime of the car, 20 years.
Unless it has a crash.
And that would be so dangerous that they would never trust us to drive round in cars with those in.
Nuclear bomb going off everywhere.
Shoot service on the way of picking whatever radioactive material.
It's not going to happen.
It's never going to happen. No, we're never going to be trusted.
So come back to the solar panels on the car.
So the best technology I've seen has only been used on small scale, which is hydrogen fuel cells, which they pour water basically into a cell, and out the other end comes electricity, but only small amounts. It's at very, very early stages. You can actually buy, I believe, on Amazon or eBay a little tiny car where you actually pour water into this cell, it produces electricity, and it runs around the floor.
Yeah. I think that out there somebody has already got the perfect solution to this. No, seriously, and they've been paid off or hushed up to not let it out there because there's still so much potential in getting money from natural fuel cars, and now they're going down this electric car route. I don't believe.
Yeah, from what I've seen, I will say this. On YouTube, on a few channels similar to mine, them talking about magnetic motor energy production devices. It never works. I've invested 10 years working with magnetic devices. You can't get them to be perpetual, even semi-perpetual. So there's nothing there in that technology that will ever come to fruition. We've heard about Stanley Myers, who ran this beach buggy across a couple of states in America on only water running through hydrogen cells, splitting the water molecules.
Isn't that dangerous, though?
Well, it could be, but the amount that he was producing was being consumed at the same time, so it's pretty safe. But we've got hydrogen cars now running around. Yeah, we've got plenty of hydrogen cars in the world already.
So why aren't they promoting them?
Because, yes, you get more miles through your litre of fuel than, and it's cheaper. But, the thing is with combustion engines, when they're converted over to gas is pretty dry, and additives have to be put into petrol engines to keep the valves from burning out. So, you do reduce the longevity of the engine through not having these additives in and using dry gases like hydrogen. So it's not a clear-cut technology. I know that there are technologies now and engine manufacturers that are using porcelain pistons and piston seatings and porcelain valves and things like that. And
porcelain?
Porcelain, because it can withstand heat.
But isn't it sort of like delicate because it can...
Well, it's up to the standard. It's up to the job.
Break easily?
No, it's not new technology. It's up to the job. But I still don't think hydrogen is the way forward. A lot of people won't convert. You can convert any petrol engine car to hydrogen, and I don't think. I think one of the things that frightens people is you're carrying a bottle of hydrogen gas.
Yeah.
Which is the most explosive gas on the planet. It'll probably go off with a bigger bang than what your car back
and
would.
that's why you're back to the little nuclear charger on your car. It's just
But
the worst, isn't it?
they're never going to let us have that technology. So.
Exactly, because we're just not like ready.
We're not trusted enough.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they can't trust us to, they know by statistics that, out of 100,000 people, probably 1,000 of those are going to have an accident, and who's going to have an accident to the point where the reactor is fractured?
Just look at lockdown. As soon as they say, lockdown's was sort of like not so restricted, everyone's back on the roads, and I have to say, lockdown isn't like the first lockdown we had. There was nobody on the roads. It was like
so I just had
tumbleweed. Yeah. Seriously, and the second major lockdown, everyone's on the bloody road still, and you're thinking this is lockdown.
Yeah.
This is why we've got all these problems still with flipping COVID spreading. But anyway, I forgot the point now.
I was just thinking, I had a little vision of, this car that's crashed with a nuclear reactor in it, and they've put a sign around the car on the debris site. It won't be, it'll be blocked off for the next 450,000 years. No. And on your tom-tom, as you're driving down the road, you sat nav show you all these nuclear, danger points. Yeah.
Oh, talking about danger, have you seen the new Lost in Space series on Netflix? I think it's Netflix. I hope it is on Prime. It's so good. And the robot, if you ever seen the first series, it was just laughable. It's like Tin Man robot. But this robot in the new Lost in Space is unbelievable. And he goes, in danger, Will Robinson, danger. And it's just brilliant. You just want to see that.
I haven't seen it. I'll
have a look at it. It's really, really good.
So, I think we've covered a few things here. I hope that it's been a bit of a change for our subscribers. And I want to thank you, Stormcarol, for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You're more than welcome. And, if you guys out there have enjoyed having Stormcarol on, we found it a little bit of a refreshing difference, then maybe we'll have her back on and we'll pick up on some more subjects similar to what we've had.
Yeah, it would be cool.
Okay. So I'm going to say what I usually do, guys. It's linked down there if you want to help support our observatory. And, other than that, look after your loved ones, and I'll say what I usually do.
Bye.
For now. Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.